22 Stories, Timeless Wisdom from the Ancients. In our ever-changing lives, we often overlook the enduring values handed down by our ancestors. Each story, each lesson from the ancients, is more than advice on ethics or conduct. It reveals timeless truths about compassion, patience, and wisdom. By simply sitting back and reflecting on these stories, you can cultivate a life of peace and fulfillment. Story 1. To achieve great things, one must endure small troubles. In both conduct and career, the saying "small impatience spoils great plans" has long served as a profound lesson from the ancients, meaning that failing to endure small inconveniences can ruin larger goals. This story teaches us that patience is fundamental for success. To practice patience is to possess the wisdom to accomplish great things. A prime example is King Go-Genevieve, who endured hardship for years to reclaim his kingdom. Han Exine also exemplified patience when he chose to endure humiliation, crawling under a rogue's legs rather than jeopardize his larger ambitions. Zheng Er and Qin Yu, patience for the sake of great ambitions. Zheng Er and Qin Yu were scholars from Wei who went into hiding after their state was destroyed. They moved to the town of Chen, working as gatekeepers to survive. Once, a local official beat Qin Yu, who became angry and wanted to retaliate, but Zheng Er held him back. After the official left, Zheng reminded Qin that without patience, their lives would be at risk, potentially ruining their plans. Later, both Zheng Er and Qin Yu rose to become chancellors. If they hadn't exercised patience back then, they would not have achieved such success. Han Qi, patience is a path to respect. Han Qi, a Northern Song dynasty chancellor, was known for his tolerance and often reminded people, to accomplish great things, one must endure small matters. Once, Han Qi received 2 precious jade cups as a gift. During a banquet, a servant accidentally dropped the cups, shattering them. Seeing the servant's terror, Han Qi simply smiled and said, "Everyone makes mistakes, don't worry if it wasn't intentional." Witnesses admired his tolerance and patience. The importance of patience in life. Those who achieve great things, in any field, possess extraordinary patience. Patience is not only a way of conduct, but a means of self-cultivation. In life, those who temper themselves through hardship develop tolerance and know how to balance firmness and flexibility. The ancients taught that only by practicing patience and taking a step back in minor matters can one develop a noble character. Whether rich or poor, patience helps us maintain our integrity in all circumstances. Great achievements require not only talent but also a steadfast patience to overcome challenges and persist toward one's goals. Story 2. Envy, hurting others, hurting yourself. In life, envy doesn't just harm others, it ultimately destroys the person harboring it. The ancients said, envy harms both others and oneself, as jealousy often leads to malicious actions, creating enmities and resulting in tragic consequences. The story of Pang Wan and Sun Bin, 2 friends who studied military strategy together but became bitter enemies, illustrates the devastating effects of envy. Pang Wan and Sun Bin were both disciples of a famous military strategist. Although they started from the same place, Sun Bin's exceptional talent and creativity in warfare quickly earned him widespread admiration. Pang Wan, feeling overshadowed and insecure, grew increasingly envious of Sun Bin. This jealousy eventually turned Pang from a friend into an enemy. When Pang Wan was appointed as general of Wei, he secretly invited Sun Bin to join him, hiding a sinister motive. Unaware of Pang's plan, Sun Bin eagerly accepted the invitation, thinking it was an opportunity to reunite. But upon Sun Bin's arrival, Pang, fearing that Sun's talent would outshine his own, framed him for treason. Pang had Sun's legs amputated and his face branded so he would be unable to show himself or pursue a military career. However, talent is not easily suppressed. While in Wei, Sun Bin encountered an envoy from Qi who recognized his brilliance and secretly brought him back to Qi, where he could finally put his military skills to use. One of Sun Bin's most famous strategies was during the encirclement of Wei to save Zhao campaign. When Wei attacked Zhao, Sun advised Qi's general, Tianji, to avoid a direct confrontation and instead strike critical areas of Wei, forcing Wei to retreat. This approach allowed Qi to ambush Wei's forces at Guiling, leading to a significant victory. 13 years later, Wei and Zhao again allied to attack Han, and Qi was once again called upon to assist. Sun Bin devised an ambush strategy in the mountainous region of Meiling, an ideal location for a surprise attack. He ordered the soldiers to progressively reduce their cooking fires to trick Wei's army into thinking that Qi's forces were dwindling. Pang Wan, arrogant and eager to pursue, led his troops into Sun Bin's trap. Just as planned, Wei's forces found themselves surrounded by thousands of Qi archers, who unleashed a storm of arrows when the signal fire was lit. In the chaos, Pang Wan, trapped with no escape, took his own life in bitter defeat. Before he died, Pang lamented, "Even in death, I cannot surpass Sun Bin." Pang's downfall was not just due to a lack of skill, but also the toxic jealousy and malice he harbored. In his envious rage, he sacrificed his honor and schemed against others, yet still could not surpass the one he envied. The story of Pang Wan and Sun Bin teaches us that envy only leads to suffering and failure. A person consumed by jealousy harms themselves, distorting their view of the world and life. In contrast, those who act with integrity, tolerance, and kindness are the ones who remain strong and respected. Envy is a double-edged sword, not only wounding others, but also leaving deep scars in the soul of the envious. The ancients advised, rejoice in others' success as if it were your own, sympathize with others' losses as if they were yours. Those who live with generosity and celebrate the achievements of others will be rewarded with goodness in life. Envy is not only a burden on the mind, but also a path to self-destruction. Story 3. Using Buddhism for profit and disrespecting the divine leads to immediate misfortune. The law of karma spares no one. Those who exploit or mock the divine not only harm others, but also bring disaster upon themselves. During the Tang dynasty, in the county of Chang'an, there was a man named Gao Fian, born into a noble family, but he had little respect for Buddhism. Once, on his way to take an exam, he was pursued by 2 riders whom he recognized as demons sent by Yama, the lord of the underworld, to capture him. In his attempt to escape, Gao was thrown from his horse and died. Upon arriving in the underworld, Yama reproached Gao for his earthly sins, such as stealing fruit from temples, disrespecting the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and using harsh words to insult monks. He was sentenced to swallow 400 molten iron pellets over 4 days and have his tongue cut out. However, because he had once read the Lotus Sutra, Yama showed mercy and allowed him to return to the living. After this incident, Gao's entire family took refuge in Buddhism and began practicing sincerely. Another story recounts the tale of Monk Yintong during the Northern and Southern dynasties. Despite being a monk, Yintong was greedy for wealth and exploited people's reverence for the Buddha to make money. He solicited donations for casting Buddha statues, promising that the more people contributed, the greater merit they would accumulate. After collecting a large sum, he used only a small portion for the statue and kept the rest for himself, spending it lavishly and sending it to his family. When word of Yintong's deceit spread, people gradually stopped visiting the temple. Furious, Yintong cursed the statue and struck it with a stick, angrily demanding why it no longer attracted offerings as before. At that moment, a golden-armored deity appeared, rebuking him as a degenerate who dared to defile the Buddha, and struck him repeatedly with an iron rod, leaving him battered and in agonizing pain. In the days that followed, Yintong's wounds did not heal but festered like burns, with blood constantly oozing. He endured excruciating pain for 100 days before he finally died. Just before he passed, the ground beneath his room sank several feet, leading people to believe that Yintong had descended into hell to continue his punishment. This story serves as a warning that those who exploit religion for personal gain or mock the divine will face severe karmic consequences, not only in this life but in the lives to come. Story 4: Tales of the Ancient Art of Face Reading. In ancient times, a person's appearance was thought to deeply reflect their inner nature and character. Consequently, the ancients valued the art of face reading as a tool for forming relationships and assessing others. Here are a few notable stories about the art of face reading from the past. 1. Zhang Guofan's mastery in face reading. Zhang Guofan, a famous politician and military strategist, was also a master of physiognomy, or face reading. Known for his sharp observation, he could assess a person's character, talent, and morality just by studying their face. When meeting someone, Zhang Guofan would silently observe his guest, noting his impressions of their personality and behavior, then comparing his assessments with reality. Most of his judgments were remarkably accurate, earning him great respect. Once, Li Hongzhang sent 3 generals to meet Zhang Guofan. Instead of meeting them face-to-face, Zhang observed them through a mirror in the room and recorded his observations. One of the generals, Zhang Shouqing, with a composed and dignified expression, later achieved great success and was appointed as governor of Liangjiang. Lu Mingchuan, a man with several moles on his face, became famous for his military prowess. The third, a short man with a shrewd appearance, only rose to a minor official position, as Zhang had predicted. 2. Fan Li's reading of King Gojian's face. Fan Li, a skilled strategist and politician during the spring and autumn period, helped King Gojian of Yu defeat the state of Wu. However, after the victory, Fan Li chose to retire. He had observed that Gojian's facial features, particularly his long neck and pointed mouth, indicated a ruler who could share hardship but would struggle to share prosperity. Fan Li advised Wen Zhong, another high-ranking official, to leave the court, but Wen Zhong ignored the advice and was later executed by Gojian. After leaving the court, Fan Li turned to business and became a successful merchant, establishing a legacy in commerce for centuries to come. 3. Guan Lu's face reading of Ding Yang. Guan Lu was a renowned fortune teller and face reader. He once read the face of Ding Yang, a powerful figure, and predicted misfortune for him. Guan Lu observed that Ding Yang's posture and bearing suggested a haunted appearance, a sign of impending disaster. True to the prediction, Ding Yang was eventually killed. This story exemplifies how Guan Lu interpreted fate through one's physical appearance and demeanor. These stories about ancient face reading are not just mysterious legends, but also serve as lessons on perceiving people. Through subtle details in appearance and behavior, skilled face readers could recognize a person's essence and destiny, reminding us of the value of living with honesty and kindness. Story 5: The Power of Kindness, Virtue Overcomes Fate. The ancients often said, "Virtue overcomes fate," meaning that kindness and virtue have the power to change one's destiny. This story is a clear example of how compassion and kindness can not only help others, but also protect oneself in times of difficulty. One hot summer day in 1981, I was out with my children. As we walked down the street, we passed a fortune teller who invited me to have my fortune read. I didn't believe in fortune telling and declined, but my eldest daughter tugged my hand and whispered, "Mom, let him do it. He looks so sad, he could use the money for a meal." Touched by her kindness, I agreed to let him read our fortunes. The fortune teller carefully studied my face and my children's, then unexpectedly shook his head and refused to say more or take any payment. Despite his reluctance, my children insisted on paying him. Eventually, he accepted, but as he took the money, he began to cry, touching each child's head and murmuring, "Oh, the heavens are blind." His sorrowful expression unsettled me, but I did not ask more, simply said goodbye, and continued on our way. Later, in a nearby park, we saw a woman on her knees begging for help. Her son was critically ill in the hospital, and she desperately needed money for treatment. Hearing her story, my children ran over, lifted her up, and said, "Our mom will help you." Inspired by their generosity, I did not hesitate to give her all the money I had with me and encouraged others to do the same. Afterward, I accompanied her to the hospital to pay for her son's medical expenses, helping him make it through his crisis. Not long after, one afternoon, I heard news of a major fire near our neighborhood. I intended to head straight home after my meeting and asked a colleague for a ride. As we approached, I was horrified to see that the fire had engulfed my building. In panic, I ran inside, calling my children's names. Firefighters quickly assisted in the search and eventually brought my children out, who had only suffered minor smoke inhalation. Miraculously, despite the intense flames that nearly destroyed the entire building, our apartment remained completely untouched. Amazed, one of the firefighters remarked, "This house must be very blessed. It's as if the flames couldn't reach it." Another firefighter mentioned that while spraying water, he hadn't even noticed our apartment, as if it had temporarily disappeared. A few days later, when I took my children to buy books, we ran into the fortune teller again. He was stunned to see them and rushed over, hugging them tightly, his eyes red with emotion. "You're alive, what a miracle." He confessed that when he read their fortunes, he saw that they would face a great calamity in the summer and would struggle to survive it. The vision had haunted him, so much so that he'd stopped working for several days. Miraculously, the children's kindness had helped them overcome their fate. Living with kindness not only helps others, but can also change our own destinies. Some things are beyond explanation, yet when we do good, the universe often rewards us with positive outcomes. A similar story highlights the power of kindness. Walter, a famous Brazilian filmmaker, once encountered a young shoeshine boy about 10 years old in a poor suburb. The boy was thin and hungry, and after some hesitation, he asked Walter for a small loan to buy food. Moved by the boy's honesty and pleading eyes, Walter gave him some money. Time passed, and Walter forgot the incident until one day, back at the station, the shoeshine boy approached him to repay the money. Touched by the boy's integrity, Walter not only refused the repayment but invited him to his film company's office, offering him the lead role in an upcoming film. The next day, the boy arrived with a few orphaned friends like himself. Walter, moved by the boy's kindness in bringing others, gave him the role without further audition, saying, "Your kindness is the best qualification." These stories, whether about Xu Ji, a high-ranking official who renounced wealth to pursue enlightenment, or the kind-hearted children who helped someone in need and were saved from disaster, all show that the power of kindness is boundless. Compassion and empathy not only bring peace to the soul but also shield us in times of hardship. Virtue indeed can overcome fate. Live kindly and help others, for the universe always has good plans for those with a compassionate heart. Story 6: The Different Life Aspirations of Confucius and His Two Students. One day, Confucius discussed life aspirations with two of his distinguished disciples, Yan Hui and Zilu. Each of their statements revealed three profound levels of human ideals. Zilu's aspiration, selflessness toward friends. Zilu, the oldest of Confucius' disciples, was known for his integrity and courage. He said, "I am willing to share my clothes and my carriage with friends. Even if it costs me, I would not regret it. Confucius acknowledged Zilu's courage, but advised that for Zilu to reach an ideal level, he must further cultivate benevolence, so his bravery would benefit the greater good. Zilu exemplified selflessness and generosity toward friends, prioritizing friendship over personal assets. This was a significant step beyond self-interest. Yin Hui's aspiration, selflessness toward society. Yin Hui, Confucius' most beloved student, not only valued virtue but also demonstrated humility and self-discipline. When speaking of his aspirations, Yin Hui said, "I do not wish to show off my strengths or take credit for my accomplishments." Confucius praised Yin Hui for his spirit of learning, virtue, and his ability to avoid repeating mistakes. Yin Hui lived a simple life, content and joyful in his moral growth, even in poverty. This self-cultivation and dedication to society represented a high level of moral integrity. Confucius' aspiration, selflessness toward humanity. In the turbulent spring and autumn period, Confucius aspired to create a moral, peaceful society founded on benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and trust. His ideal society was one where people lived by these values, rulers treated subjects fairly, children respected parents, and friends were loyal. Confucius envisioned spreading kindness across the world, creating a society of peace and morality. His aspiration was far-reaching, encompassing not only society but all of humanity, embodying a compassionate ideal similar to that of a saint. 3 levels of aspiration. Confucius and his disciples represent 3 ascending levels of virtue and life ideals. Zilu transcended self-interest to live selflessly for friends. Yin Hui dedicated himself to cultivating virtue, with no desire for fame, and acted selflessly for society. Confucius aspired beyond personal and societal limits to embrace all humanity, a lofty vision of peace and universal compassion. This story reminds us that true individuals strive to grow continuously, progressing from selflessness toward friends to contributing to society and, ultimately, to serving all humankind. These are the 3 levels of noble ideals and moral virtue in life. Story 7: The Art of Persuasion, the Power of Subtlety and Composure. In modern life, eloquence, interpersonal skills, and the ability to persuade are essential elements for success. Those who can persuade with finesse not only win others over but also navigate challenges more easily. The stories of Zhuangzi and Lin Ji demonstrate the power of subtle words and wisdom. 1. The fish asking for water. During the Warring States period, Zhuangzi found himself in a difficult financial situation and went to borrow food from Wei Wenhou. Wenhou agreed but said he could help only after the taxes were collected. Realizing he couldn't wait, Zhuangzi shared a story with Wenhou. "On my way here, I saw a fish lying on the road, pleading for help due to a lack of water. I asked what it needed, and it said just a little water would be enough to survive. I replied, 'Wait until I speak to the kings of Wu and Yu and ask them to divert rivers to save you.' The fish looked at me sorrowfully and said, 'It might be better if you look for me in the dried fish market.'" Through this story, Zhuangzi subtly conveyed his urgent need for assistance. Wenhou understood immediately and gave Zhuangzi food on the spot. With this clever approach, Zhuangzi expressed his immediate need without making his host uncomfortable. 2. The Gentleman and the Commoner. On another occasion, Lin Ji, a high-ranking minister of Qi, appeared before King Jing of Qi in simple attire. The king asked, "Is this the attire of a gentleman or a commoner?" Lin Ji replied that people should not be judged by their clothing, and he cited famous figures from history. People of Chu dressed simply, yet produced the talented Zishi. People of Qi wore short robes but gave birth to greats like Guanzhong and Sun Wu. People of Yu tattooed their skin and cut their hair short but raised virtuous figures like Fan Li. Lin Ji concluded, if you judge people by their clothing, then those wearing dog fur should bark, and those in goat skins should bleat. Lin Ji's response revealed his wisdom, teaching the king that a person's worth lies in their character and intellect, not their appearance. Impressed by Lin Ji's eloquence, King Jing praised him as a courageous and exceptionally persuasive man. In response, Lin Ji said, true courage is maintaining calm and integrity in the face of power, unaffected by the wealth and force behind it. A skilled orator possesses not only the gift of speech, but also a dignified composure and moral integrity. With wisdom and subtlety, they point out right and wrong without harming others. This skill is not just in their words, but in their poise and cultivated character. It is the mark of a true gentleman, who not only persuades, but builds trust, maintains goodwill, and thus achieves great success. Story 8. The Law of Karma. This story, set in 1733 during the 11th year of the Yongjing Emperor's reign in the Qing dynasty, tells of a scholar named Su Donan, who was returning home after participating in the imperial exams in the capital. At a riverside tavern, he happened to meet an old friend who had recently been dismissed from his position. In his drunken state, the friend expressed deep resentment, lamenting that good deeds seemed unrewarded while the wicked went unpunished. He was convinced that karma or retribution did not exist. At that moment, a horseman stopped by the tavern, tied up his horse, and began listening to their conversation. After some time, he approached Su Donan and his friend, saying, "It is incorrect to think there is no karmic justice. Think about it. Those who indulge in vice often suffer poor health, gamblers are generally impoverished, and robbers often meet tragic ends. This is the law of the heavens. However, everyone has a unique life path and circumstances, so retribution doesn't always happen immediately. Some wrongdoers or those who deserve blessings may not yet face their ultimate fate. Heaven has a fair and intricate way of balancing, beyond the understanding of mere mortals." The horseman then looked at Su Donan's friend and said, "You could have risen to the rank of a 7th grade official, but due to your deceitful nature, constant flattery, tendency to shirk responsibility, and your skill in blaming others, heaven has demoted you to an 8th grade official. Yet you believe that your current rank is a result of your own deep schemes, not realizing it is heaven's reduction of your blessings for your immoral actions." The horseman then leaned close and whispered a few words into the friend's ear. Hearing this, Su Donan's friend broke into a cold sweat, trembling as he asked, "How do you know about this?" The horseman smiled coldly, replying, "It's not only I who know, heaven, earth, and all the spirits are fully aware." With that, the mysterious man mounted his horse, and in an instant he was gone, leaving only a cloud of dust. Story 9. The Greedy Governor and the Warning of the Earth God. Once upon a time, there was a regional governor who, driven by greed, sought to acquire a mystical dragon pearl and began plotting to slay the dragon to obtain it. This ill intention led the Earth God, guardian of the land, to manifest and issue a warning. The story goes that during the Tang dynasty under Emperor Dezong, there was a gifted man named Baiyu who declined to become an official. One day, Baiyu met a local mountain dweller who introduced him to a remarkable boy of about 14 or 15 years old, who could dive to great depths and remain underwater all day without needing to surface. Impressed by the boy's abilities, Baiyu took him under his wing and named him Qing Shui, clear water. One year, while traveling by boat from Sichuan to Jiangling, Baiyu asked Qing Shui to dive and assess the river's depth. Qing Shui quickly returned, bringing with him a treasure trove of gold and silver, which delighted Baiyu. Thanks to Qing Shui, Baiyu gradually accumulated great wealth from underwater treasures. Baiyu's friend, Huang Sun, a governor of a northern border region, was thrilled when Baiyu visited. To celebrate, he took Baiyu sightseeing and hosted lavish feasts. One day, the two friends visited an octagonal well to the north, built from natural stone. Each morning and evening, thick clouds emerged from the well, and at night it glowed brightly as if it were daylight. The locals believed a golden dragon lived within the well, serving as a heavenly guardian that protected the life in the region. Knowing this, Huang's son, curious about the well's treasures, asked Bai Yu to send Qing Shui down to investigate. Without hesitation, Bai Yu instructed Qing Shui to dive into the well. Below, Qing Shui found a colossal golden dragon clutching a luminous dragon pearl, fast asleep. Not daring to disturb it without a weapon, he resurfaced and reported what he saw. Huang's son then handed Qing Shui a precious sword, urging him to retrieve the dragon pearl. As Qing Shui dived once more, the villagers gathered, curious to see what might happen. Soon, they witnessed Qing Shui and the golden dragon locked in a fierce struggle, then vanishing together into the depths of the well. Distraught and remorseful, Huang's son and Bai Yu mourned the loss. At that moment, an elderly man, dressed simply, appeared and addressed Huang's son, revealing himself as the earth god of the area. He warned that the golden dragon was a heavenly envoy safeguarding the region and its treasures. If the dragon were angered, the whole area could suffer catastrophic consequences, and Huang's son's family might also face grave misfortune. The earth god reminded Huang's son to cultivate humility and voluntarily abandon his greedy pursuit of the dragon's pearl. Stricken with remorse, Huang's son immediately held a prayer ceremony, asking for the dragon's forgiveness. After the earth god vanished, Huang's son, filled with repentance, set up an altar and performed rituals to apologize to the golden dragon, maintaining peace in the land. Story 10. Never make a rash oath. In Buddhist teachings, the Wise and Foolish Sutra recounts a story from the time of the Buddha Shakyamuni. Some nuns, even after renouncing worldly life, still felt desires arising within. They sought advice from an elderly nun, who likened human desires to fire, burning, spreading, and consuming everything. She shared a personal story of karmic retribution that she herself had experienced in a previous life. In that past life, she had been a wealthy wife who, despite her riches, could not bear children. When her husband's second wife gave birth to a son, jealousy grew into hatred. She secretly poisoned the innocent child. The boy's grieving mother believed she had killed her son, but she denied it and swore a dreadful oath: if she had indeed killed the boy, may her husband die of a snake bite, her children be drowned or devoured by beasts, and may she herself be forced to eat her own child's flesh and be buried alive, with her parents burned to death. Though her curse did not manifest in that life, the karmic consequences carried over into her next life, haunting her as unyielding misfortune. In her subsequent life, she was born into a noble family and married a kind man. After giving birth to a second child, she and her husband traveled to her parents' home. En route, she went into premature labor. The smell of blood attracted a snake, which bit her husband, killing him. Heartbroken, she continued on with her infant. When they reached a river, she left her elder child on the bank and carried the baby across. Tragically, the frightened elder child jumped into the water and drowned, while her newborn was attacked and devoured by wolves. Devastated, she returned to her parents, only to find that her family had perished in a fire. She was forced into a second marriage, and her new husband, in a drunken rage, made her eat the flesh of her newborn. Her life spiraled into unending tragedy. Later, she traveled to Varanasi, where she met a compassionate elder who married her. However, after his death, she was to be buried alive with him according to local customs. Fortunately, grave robbers saved her, sparing her from that fate. After enduring years of suffering, she finally encountered the Buddha and shared her life's tragic story, expressing deep repentance for her past actions. Through the Buddha's compassion, she was permitted to become a nun and eventually attained the state of an arhat. She recounted her story to fellow nuns, warning them that desires are a consuming fire, and if not extinguished in time, karma will eventually take its toll. This tale profoundly impacted the other nuns, who devoted themselves wholeheartedly to their spiritual practice, gradually purifying their minds of desire. The story teaches that an oath is not mere words, and the unseen realms, divine forces bear witness. An oath is a seed of karma, and when the time comes, retribution will inevitably follow. Story 11: The Hunter's Awakening After a Tragic Discovery. On a vast grassland, a seasoned hunter lay in wait, concealed, his keen eyes searching for prey. Before long, he spotted his target, a large, slow-moving antelope that had fallen behind the herd. Satisfied with his choice, he silently raised his rifle and took aim. But an unexpected scene unfolded before him, shaking him to his core. The antelope, as if sensing its fate, turned its gaze toward the hunter. Its once wary eyes softened, and it slowly sank to its knees, forelegs folding as though it were begging for mercy. Tears rolled down its face, reflecting its sorrow. The hunter, feeling a strange unease, hesitated momentarily. Yet habit took over, and he pulled the trigger without further thought. The bullet found its mark, and the poor animal collapsed in a pool of blood. When the hunter approached his fallen prey and prepared to field dress it, he froze in shock at what he found, a small, unborn antelope inside the mother's belly. The reality struck him hard. The antelope's pleading behavior now made sense. She had been protecting her unborn calf. The hunter's heart was heavy with guilt and remorse as he realized that, had he held back just a little longer, the young antelope would have been born and able to run free on the open plains. This profound realization marked a turning point for the hunter. He discarded his gun, once a prized possession that had taken countless animal lives. He renounced hunting altogether, abandoning a trade he had spent years honing. The great novelist Leo Tolstoy once said, "Killing transforms kind-hearted men into brutes." Singer and activist Linda McCartney echoed a similar sentiment. If slaughterhouses had glass walls, everyone would be vegetarian. These words are a poignant reminder that every piece of meat on our plates, every leather bag, and every fur coat we wear comes at the cost of a creature's life. Do we ever stop to wonder if, in their final moments, these animals shed tears too? This story invites us to consider our actions toward other living beings, reminding us that compassion can blossom even in the unlikeliest of hearts. Story 12: The Immediate Retribution of a Corrupt Magistrate. During the Qianlong era, a magistrate was dispatched by the imperial court to inspect the Yellow River and was stationed at the Taojiang public quarters. It was New Year's Eve, and he rode with 4 attendants across a snow-covered river under the cold night sky. While crossing, they spotted a faint light from a small thatched hut. When they approached, they discovered it belonged to the local registrar, who was still working late into the night. Impressed by his dedication, the magistrate praised the registrar, who then invited him to share some food and wine to celebrate the new year. After a few cups, the magistrate returned to his quarters and, exhausted, fell asleep. In his dreams, he found himself patrolling again, but this time in an unfamiliar place. After traveling about 2 miles, he noticed a lit cottage and knocked on the door. To his shock, it was his late mother who opened it. Surprised to see him, she asked why he had come there. He explained about crossing the river, and she sorrowfully replied that he had crossed into the realm of the dead and couldn't return. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the magistrate broke down in tears. His mother consoled him, suggesting they seek help from a powerful monk who lived west of the river. Together, they reached a solemn temple where a high monk sat with his eyes closed. The magistrate knelt and pleaded for his life, but the monk remained silent. Finally, he opened his eyes and spoke, "You have shed too much blood, your merit and blessings have run dry." The magistrate tried to justify his actions, insisting that all those he had condemned were done so in the name of justice. But the monk asked sternly, "Was it truly justice, or were you influenced by personal ambition, aligning yourself with the corrupt for your own advancement?" The monk then pressed a jade scepter to the magistrate's chest, sending a chilling cold through him, causing him to tremble and sweat. With his last defenses shattered, the magistrate confessed his wrongdoings and begged for forgiveness. The monk replied that he could not erase his sins and warned that his reckoning would come in the underworld. However, it wasn't his time to die yet, so he would be allowed to return to the living. As they left the temple, his mother, weeping, advised, "You only have a few days left. Why did you allow ambition to blind you, mistaking promotions as signs of success?" Overwhelmed with shame, the magistrate could only bow his head in remorse. Just then, he awoke, realizing it was already midday, with visiting officials puzzled by his late rising. Shortly after, the magistrate fell gravely ill, coughing up blood until he passed away. Despite his knowledge of the law, he had used his position for personal gain, aligning with the corrupt and condemning the innocent. His lifetime was marked by retribution, and his sentence in the afterlife awaited him. Those who wield authority with impure intentions and manipulate the law to harm others face consequences more severe than this magistrate's punishment. This story serves as a powerful reminder: those who corrupt the justice system for personal gain will inevitably meet with karmic retribution, both in this life and the next. Story 13. A kind heart brings blessings to the household. During the Ming Dynasty in Wujiang County, Jiangsu Province, a couple named Ti Fuk and Du Ti made a modest living by raising silkworms and weaving silk. Though they lived simply and kindly, they had not yet been blessed with children. One day, on his way home after selling silk, Ti Fuk found a pouch containing over 6 taels of silver. Although tempted to use the silver to grow their business, he felt worried for the person who had lost it. He decided to wait at the spot to return it to its owner. Eventually, a young farmer came by, frantically searching for his lost money. Ti Fuk handed the pouch over, refusing the farmer's offer to keep half of it as a reward. When he returned home and shared the story, his wife, Du Ti, praised his kindness. From that day forward, their family experienced an unexpected wave of good fortune. Their silk business flourished, and soon after, they were blessed with a plump, healthy baby boy, whom they named Quan Bao. One year, when the village had exhausted its mulberry leaves, Ti Fuk joined others in rowing to Dongting Lake to buy more leaves. They stopped at a riverbank to rest and cook dinner, only to realize they had no fire. Ti Fuk eagerly went ashore to ask for help. After knocking on several doors, he finally found a house where a woman recognized him. He was the man who had returned the silver to her husband, Chuan. Overjoyed at this chance reunion, Chuan insisted on giving Ti Fuk his leftover mulberry leaves, and they vowed to become sworn brothers, promising to have their children marry each other in the future. That evening, a fierce storm struck with heavy winds and rain, so Chuan invited Ti Fuk to stay the night. The next morning, Ti Fuk learned that the boats of other villagers had capsized in the storm, tragically leading to multiple casualties. Safe on shore, Ti Fuk thanked Chuan for his hospitality, but Chuan replied, "It's because you often do good that you are blessed with this protection." Later that year, with his business thriving, Ti Fuk wanted to expand his weaving workshop. At just the right time, a neighbor offered to sell a room, though they had haphazardly raised the price. When Ti Fuk dug up the land to install his weaving frames, he discovered a buried pot containing 1,000 taels of silver. Filled with gratitude, the family prospered, gaining a reputation throughout the region. On another occasion, while renovating their main hall, Ti Fuk stumbled upon 8 more silver ingots hidden under a column. Soon after, an elderly man, Baek Hugh though, arrived, explaining that he had been saving silver over many years, only to find it missing. T-Fuck honestly returned the silver, but the elderly man, feeling he had no fortune left to enjoy, refused it. Instead, T-Fuck regularly sent him money and treated him as his own father. When Mr. Baek passed away, T-Fuck arranged his funeral with great care. As his son grew older, he married Chuan's daughter, and the family continued to live harmoniously and respectfully. The T family became wealthy and prosperous, embodying the truth of the saying, "Good deeds bring great blessings." This story reminds us that kindness and virtue are the most lasting foundations of wealth and happiness. Story 14. The consequences of bad deeds. Skipping debts brings ill fate. Professor Van He, a Taiwanese scholar educated in the United States, initially believed karma and retribution were religious constructs to instill fear and order. However, after witnessing various stories of karmic retribution, he realized that some mysterious phenomena defy scientific explanation. One of the karmic tales he collected involved a family from southern Taiwan known for being cunning and shrewd with money. The father often borrowed money without documenting the debt, then found ways to avoid repayment. After accumulating a substantial amount, the family moved to a new city, buying a house with their ill-gotten gains. When their creditors from the old village came to demand payment, the family denied any debt, arguing there was no written proof. An elderly woman pursued repayment for a debt dating back to the Japanese occupation. After a heated argument, the family reluctantly gave her $2,000 in cash. Heartbroken and defeated, the woman passed away shortly after. Meanwhile, the family's son studied medicine, became a doctor, and opened his own practice. As his wealth grew, so did his arrogance. Tragically, his arrogance led him to commit an unspeakable crime. He assaulted and accidentally killed a female patient. The victim's family chose not to publicize the incident, requesting only a $30,000 compensation. However, the doctor's family refused to pay and even mocked the victim's family's demand. A friend of the family, concerned about potential legal trouble, paid the $30,000 on their behalf, yet the doctor's wife took the money and refused to pass it to the victim's family. Confident in their connections within the judicial system, the family felt invincible. However, karma had its way. A new judge, known for his integrity, was appointed in the local court and took a personal interest in the case. The doctor was tried, found guilty, and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. His reputation, career, and family life crumbled under the weight of his crimes and deceit. As the old saying goes, he who walks at night will eventually meet a ghost. This story reminds us that good deeds foster protection and harmony, while bad deeds will ultimately bring ruin and regret. Story 15. Using all his tuition money to help a stranger, a general receives an unexpected reward. Gui Yuanzhen, a man from Yanxiu, Taiyuan, was known from a young age for his generous spirit and selflessness, always helping others without expecting anything in return. In his youth, he attended the Imperial Academy in Taiyuan with classmates Xie Zhe and Zhao Yanchao. One day, his parents sent him 400,000 coins for his tuition. Just as he received this money, a man in mourning clothes came seeking help, explaining that he lacked the means to properly bury his ancestors, who had gone unburied for 5 generations. Without hesitation, Gui Yuanzhen gave the man his entire tuition fund without even asking for his name. His friends, Xie Zhe and Zhao Yanchao, laughed at his apparent foolishness, but Guo replied that helping someone lay their ancestors to rest was a noble act and nothing to mock. Later, Guo passed his imperial exams, becoming a scholar and military leader appointed by the court to govern the Liangzhou region, a place often under attack from Tibetan and Turkic forces. With his skill and reputation, he led an army of 50,000 to defend the border, instilling fear in his enemies and keeping the frontier safe. He earned renown and became a respected general, celebrated by the people of the western regions. When a rumor surfaced accusing Gui Yuanzhen of harboring rebellious intentions, prominent officials like Di Renjie and Song Jing defended him, putting Empress Wu Zetian at ease. After years of maintaining peace along the borders, he was called back to the capital. Despite his high status, Gui Yuanzhen didn't own a home and stayed with friends upon his return. One day, while taking a walk, a stranger approached his horse, handed him a letter, and quickly left. The letter contained only an address and a list of items, without any name. Following the directions, he arrived at the designated tree and discovered 2 horses and 3,000 bolts of silk fabric. Gui Yuanzhen quickly realized that this must be the mysterious stranger's way of repaying the kindness Guo had shown by helping to bury his ancestors. He hadn't expected anything in return, nor had he asked for the man's identity, and now, in gratitude, the man reciprocated anonymously. This unexpected wealth enabled Guo to buy a home and settle his family. Meanwhile, his classmates, Xie Zhe and Zhao Yin Chao, who had once mocked his generosity, could only sigh upon hearing the story. They realized that true kindness does not seek repayment, it inevitably brings unexpected blessings. The story of Gui Yuanzhen, a celebrated Tang Dynasty general, illustrates that good deeds ultimately lead to fortune, often when least anticipated. Story 16. A scholar's resolve to learn. After 3 days, look at each other with new eyes. Lu Meng, a famous general during the Three Kingdoms era, was born into poverty and had little formal education. As a result, people often dismissed him, referring to him derisively as the clumsy man of Wu. Lu Meng joined Sun Quan's army under his brother-in-law Ding Deng when he was very young and quickly gained recognition for his bravery, making significant contributions to the army. However, due to his lack of education, he was looked down upon and not taken seriously. One day, Sun Quan advised Lu Meng and another brave general, Jiang Qin, that they needed to read and study to increase their knowledge and better fulfill their responsibilities. Initially, Lu Meng hesitated, saying the duties of military life left him no time to study. Sun Quan didn't give up and encouraged him, saying, "I don't expect you to delve deeply into complex studies. It's enough to read historical records and learn from past events to expand your understanding. I, too, make time to read, and it has benefited me greatly. You should not neglect the chance to learn." These words struck a chord with Lu Meng, who resolved to improve himself. He began to study diligently, reading books on history, military strategy, and philosophy. Over time, Lu Meng's knowledge grew impressively, even surpassing that of many scholars of the time. After the death of the esteemed strategist Zhou Yu, Lu Su, Lu Meng's close friend, was appointed to succeed him as commander of the army. On his way to take up the position, Lu Su visited Lu Meng and was invited to a meal. During their conversation, Lu Su was astonished by Lu Meng's deep insights and thoughtful analysis of military strategy. Surprised, Lu Su exclaimed, "I always thought of you as just a brave warrior, but today I see you have become a remarkable scholar, no longer the clumsy man of Wu." To this, Lu Meng famously replied, "After 3 days, one should look at a man with fresh eyes." The story of Lu Meng is a powerful example of how determination and a commitment to learning can lead to incredible personal transformation. His words, "After 3 days, look at each other with new eyes," remind us never to judge others based on outdated perceptions. With dedication and a will to grow, anyone can unlock their potential and achieve greatness. People often overlook their hidden strengths, but with the right guidance and persistence in learning, these qualities can emerge, enabling them to become highly capable individuals. True scholars are those who continuously strive to refine their intellect and improve themselves day by day. Story 17. A monk's question reveals the origin of heaven and hell. On a scorching afternoon, a general and his attendant rode swiftly down a desolate mountain road, dust rising under the pounding hooves of their horses. They appeared to be in a hurry. As they galloped on, the general noticed a monk strolling peacefully along the path, seemingly indifferent to stepping aside. Irritated yet still courteous, the general reined in his horse, dismounted, and asked the monk, "Why do you block the way so carelessly?" The monk did not answer right away. Instead, he slowly looked the general over, then asked, "Are you hurrying toward heaven or hell?" The unexpected question made the general pause. After a moment of thought, he responded, "Where are heaven and hell you speak of?" The monk smiled gently and asked in return, "What position do you hold?" Proudly, the general replied, "I am a general." The monk feigned surprise and said, "A general? I can't imagine who would choose someone as foolish as you to be a general." The mocking word stung the general's pride, and in his anger, he drew his sword, holding it against the monk's neck. He shouted, "How dare you insult me, you impudent monk? I could kill you right here and now." Remaining calm, the monk looked at the blade and folded his hands, saying softly, "At this moment, the gates of hell have opened to you." The general suddenly understood. As he lowered his sword, he laughed humbly and said, "Indeed, in harboring such anger, I had opened the gates of hell." Seeing this change, the monk responded with a smile, "And now, with humility and compassion, the gates of heaven have opened to you." At that moment, a cool breeze swept through the trees, easing the oppressive heat. This story reminds us that heaven and hell are not distant realms but states of mind. With compassion, we create our heaven, and with anger, we find hell within ourselves. Story 18. The boy from Jinzhou whose destiny changed twice, revealing the power of karma. Years ago, there was a boy named Yang Xiaobao from Jinzhou. Orphaned at age 8, Xiaobao worked for a wealthy family to survive. The rich man's son, who was Xiaobao's age, constantly bullied him, forcing him to crawl under his legs and hitting him. One day, when Xiaobao accidentally lost the family's ox, the wealthy man beat him nearly to death and chased him away. Homeless and helpless, Xiaobao wandered aimlessly, eventually collapsing from hunger near an abandoned temple. In his faint state, Xiaobao dreamed of meeting the king of the underworld. Pouring out his grievances, he asked why heaven was so unfair. The king listened and told him that Xiaobao was destined to live until 81, while the rich man's son would live only until 18, despite his wealthy life. Unmoved, Xiaobao begged to trade his long life for a shorter one filled with wealth and luxury. Displeased by his rashness, the king reduced Xiaobao's lifespan to just 18 years and sent him back to the living world. When Xiaobao awoke, he was taken in by a wealthy man named Li Wantam, who, having no children, adopted him as his son. Xiaobao enjoyed a life of privilege, but within 3 years, both of his adoptive parents passed away, leaving him alone once more. Deeply affected by their loss, Xiaobao began to value life itself. Determined to help others, he used his inheritance to support the poor, becoming a beloved figure known as the living saint for his generosity. One day, a poor, disheveled old man came begging, behaving rudely and demanding more food. Despite the old man's ingratitude, Xiaobao continued to help him, explaining that true kindness expects no return, only sincerity of heart. When he turned 18, Xiaobao prepared himself for his impending death. In a dream, the king of the underworld reappeared and praised Xiaobao for his selfless acts. The ancestors of those he had helped had petitioned the king to extend Xiaobao's life. Moved by his transformation, the king granted him a full life, allowing him to live to old age. Xiao Bao eventually married, had children, and lived to be 99 years old. This story reminds us that karma is unfailingly just, and a life of compassion and virtue can transform even one's destined path, bringing blessings and longevity in return. Story 19. The karma of good deeds and blessings. Helping others is helping oneself. An old saying goes, good deeds bring blessings, and evil deeds bring misfortune. When we perform kind acts, we receive good fortune in return, while harmful actions inevitably bring negative consequences. In June 1930, in Texas, USA, a patrol officer named Fabi was pursuing a speeding truck late at night when he tragically crashed his vehicle. Severing his femoral artery, he was losing blood fast and in critical danger. The driver of the truck, named Smith, immediately stopped, bandaged Fabi's wound, and managed to save his life at a critical moment. 5 years later, in another accident, Fabi was called to the scene and discovered a man in dire condition, with a severed femoral artery. As he attended to the man, he recognized him as Smith, the very person who had once saved him. This story illustrates the karmic truth: good deeds bring good rewards. Another story tells of Mr. Lee, a modest employee at the tax office in Jiayi County, Taiwan. Over the decades, he quietly helped those in need by anonymously sending money under a pseudonym. On one occasion, he learned of a poor student named Xiao, who excelled academically but couldn't afford school tuition. Mr. Lee discreetly provided for Xiao's education throughout high school and university. Xiao went on to earn a Ph.D. in law from the University of Pennsylvania and later became a professor at National Taiwan University. Despite his acts of generosity, Mr. Lee led a humble life. Friends who visited during dinner once noticed that he and his wife had only tofu, boiled greens, and dried fish on the table. They were deeply moved by his compassion and selflessness. Thanks to his frequent acts of kindness and humble living, Mr. Lee's children also excelled academically and became successful in their own lives. This story is a powerful reminder that helping others is, in fact, helping ourselves. When we do good, kindness and support will eventually come our way in times of need. This is the reward of compassion and goodwill, showing how acts of kindness ripple back into our lives in beautiful and unexpected ways. Story 20. Success and the wisdom to withdraw, knowing when to step back. Lao Tzu once wrote, "When success is achieved, it's wise to step back. This is the way of heaven." During the Tang dynasty, a high-ranking official named Li Bai served under 4 emperors, Tang Xuanzong, Tang Suzong, Tang Daizong, and Tang Dizong. In an era rife with corrupt officials and power struggles, many statesmen met tragic ends due to betrayal and political sabotage. Yet, Li Bai remained safe, navigating treacherous political waters by knowing when to distance himself from power and step aside at the right moments. When he was young, Li Bai earned Emperor Xuanzong's trust, who wished to appoint him as the tutor for the crown prince. However, Li Bai declined, preferring to keep his role informal and friendly. Later, when corruption surged and the court grew increasingly perilous, Li Bai chose to retreat to the mountains to avoid entanglement. When Tang Suzong ascended to the throne and summoned him back as prime minister, he refused once again, preferring to offer counsel and support as a trusted advisor rather than hold an official position of power. After the Anlushan rebellion was quelled and the court stabilized, Li Bai once again sought permission to retire. Emperor Suzong was taken aback and asked for his reasons. Li Bai explained, "Your Majesty and I have known each other too well. You have entrusted me with too much and shown me too much trust. My influence has grown too large, and I can no longer act like an ordinary citizen. These 5 reasons are why I must step back." Li Bai understood that excessive favor and trust could easily make him a target of envy and hostility. Finally, Emperor Suzong allowed him to retire to Mount Hang, honoring him with the pension of a high-ranking official. Having studied the Tao, Li Bai embraced Lao Tzu's principle of achieving success and knowing when to withdraw. He understood that knowing when to step back after great accomplishments was the path to preserving one's life and legacy. Li Bai reached the highest level of wisdom in the political sphere, retaining both safety and honor, and becoming a symbol of the wisdom of understanding timing and the virtue of stepping back when necessary. This story reminds us that wisdom sometimes lies not in advancing but in knowing when to stop, to protect one's freedom and peace. Story 21: The Virtue of the Gentleman and the Difficulties of Cultivating Character in Lesser Individuals. Confucius, one of China's greatest philosophers and educators, was born into a noble family. Though he lost his father at the age of 3, Confucius received a rigorous education, especially in the 6 arts: etiquette, music, archery, charioteering, calligraphy, and arithmetic, to become a zhenzi, or gentleman. For Confucius, being a gentleman went far beyond wealth or noble birth. He believed a true gentleman was someone who embodied virtue, moral integrity, and a sense of responsibility towards society. He emphasized respect for tradition and integrity in even the smallest acts, such as choosing the right foods or preparing rituals, demonstrating his reverence for life and nature. To Confucius, a gentleman was a person of noble character, not merely of noble birth. In contrast, the Shaoran, translated as lesser person, represented individuals lacking in moral development. Confucius famously stated, "Only women and lesser individuals are difficult to teach. If you draw close to them, they become too familiar. If you distance yourself, they feel resentment." Many misunderstand this to mean Confucius looked down on women. However, in the historical context, Shaoran referred to those who had limited access to education, not inherently malicious people. Confucius held women in high regard, encouraging husbands to treat their wives with respect, acknowledging that harmonious family relationships formed the foundation of a stable society. Confucius also pioneered the idea of education without discrimination, or the belief that education should be available to all, regardless of social class. He believed that everyone, regardless of background, had the potential to become a gentleman through moral cultivation. This approach emphasized that being a gentleman was not merely a title but a level of virtue that anyone could achieve if given the right guidance and moral education. This story reminds us that the path of the gentleman requires strength of character and self-discipline. To rise above self-interest and pettiness, one must strive to embody Confucius's ideals of high moral character and virtue. Misinterpreting Confucius's teachings diminishes their depth and purpose, as his teachings ultimately aimed to cultivate compassion, respect, and noble qualities in everyone. Story 22: A gentleman avoids flattery. Lesser individuals cannot be reformed. Confucius valued honesty above all else and disapproved of flowery or insincere language. He believed that a true gentleman should speak less and do more, without pretense or trying to win favor through flattery. In his teachings, he warned that those who often use flattering words and feign humility are dishonest and untrustworthy individuals. In the Analects, Confucius states, "Flowery words and an obsequious manner are seldom found in a gentleman." According to Confucius, people who are outwardly courteous yet inwardly deceitful lack integrity and do not earn others' respect. He emphasized that such individuals would struggle to embody the virtues of a gentleman and would ultimately bring harm to themselves and others. History offers numerous examples of the downfall of flatterers and deceitful people. One such figure was He Shen, a prominent official during China's Qing dynasty, notorious for his flattery and corruption. While he enjoyed Emperor Qianlong's blind trust, He Shen accumulated massive wealth through corrupt practices. However, after Qianlong's death, Emperor Jiaqing exposed Yixin's many crimes, leading to Yixin's forced suicide and the confiscation of his fortune. Another example is Yang Guozhong, the cousin of Yang Guifei during the Tang dynasty. He flattered Emperor Xuanzong constantly to maintain his influence and used his position to eliminate rivals and live lavishly. However, his deceitful actions and abuse of power contributed to the Anlushan rebellion, which led to the Tang dynasty's decline and his own death at the hands of rebels. Confucius's teachings remind us that a gentleman should avoid sycophancy, remaining true to moral values and honesty. While flattery and deceit may win short-term favor, they ultimately lead to distrust and ruin. Only sincerity and noble character can earn enduring respect, proving that integrity remains one of humanity's most enduring values.